conversations.
Cold open,
Cold open, yeah, absolutely. Is that what it's called? See, I love it. Y'all,
I think so. Yeah. Where did
I
we
will
all
say
get
I
the-
have 5 new hats.
Keeping it on brand.
Is that 5 Farcaster heads? No, couldn't be. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have all of you here because I think you each were involved in different or maybe sometimes similar ways, but FarCon couldn't have been what it was without what each of you did for it. So I really want to get the shared perspective, but I want to get like unique insights. I want to understand, now that you've had 2 weeks to look back, what are some of the things that you are taking away now that you might have maybe missed, like immediately after or during, and looking forward? Because I think there's already some fun conversations happening around FarCon and FarHack that I'm really interested to see, as, in my opinion, others might disagree, the folks who really took this idea of what FarCon could be to the next level. Like, what are some of the things that you would like to see moving forward? So let's do a brief introduction. And by the way, it shows how unprepared I am. I don't have my script. You know, these things aren't scripted.
That's okay.
Keep it cold open.
That's FarCon to a T. Actually, this is so on brand. No problem.
Bless you. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Crypto Consumer Chronicles, a Crypto Sapien podcast.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it. We can mute that. We meet here every week to define and demystify consumer crypto with the people who are building it. Make sure to sign up to our newsletter at cryptosapiens.xyz. Before getting started, I want to thank the generous supporters who make this all possible: Mosaic Labs, Optimism, and Bankless DAO. All right, we're done with that. Moving on. We're talking today to Ted, McBain, and Dylsteck, or Ted, Graham, and Dylan. I'm just going with what your Farcaster usernames are, which honestly, that's all that matters. And we're going to be talking about FarCon. But before we get there, GM, how y'all doing?
Hello.
GM.
I always thought GM was about me because I'm Graham McBain, but nobody wants to admit that.
The ego on this one. Is everybody just saying Graham McBain? Graham McBain.
I am.
Sounds about right.
I am. Graham, I adore you so much. I even got your initials on my necklace.
That's dope. I like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
I should just look into that and just make it like, yeah, I'm just the most famous person in crypto. Everybody just talks about me every day. Everybody basically prays to me every single day. The cult of GM.
The cult of GM, for sure.
I love it.
If y'all are listening on Unlonely, make sure you drop your Farcaster usernames. I like to give a treat to everybody who listens. And I did something last week, which I think I'm going to keep doing. The best question, subjective, obviously, not objective. I pull out and I airdrop a little extra degen to that question, or comments. So yeah, I mean, we do some fun stuff on Unlonely. We love Unlonely. So why don't we get started with Ted? Ted, tell me a little bit about like FarCon and you. Where did that intersect?
Well, actually, it intersected with GM, the man of the hour.
The man of crypto, the man we all talk about all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Graham, I didn't go to FarCon last year. I had just come off like 6 months of insane travel and was feeling a little burnt out and was like, I just want to be home in LA for a while. I don't think I can make it all the way to Boston. So I didn't get to experience like how wonderful the first one was, but coming out of it a few months later, Graham had reached out to me and was like, hey, I think that we should do FarCon too. And I think it should be in LA. And you're in LA, so I can't imagine anybody else. And at this time, like I don't know if there was an LA channel, but it was pretty much just me posting all the time. And then like maybe Dan or Varun would like take a picture of their Erewhon lunch and post it. So like we actually didn't know how many people were in LA. And I think Dylan, this might have been like just before, just after, like, I don't even know if Dylan was in LA yet either. But that's my origin story of Ted and FarCon. Graham, I toss it over to you because you are actually like the mastermind behind it. And I do think putting it in LA was the best decision of it. Like, I do think having it in LA was a gigabrain decision by Graham.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to not have gigabrain decisions when you have a gigabrain. So that just happens all the time. But no, I originally, like, I joined Farcaster and I was like, there are all these amazing builders. The Farcaster docs and stuff were not great at the time. There like wasn't an ANR. And so like, I was like, I'm not going to be able to build a ton of great stuff. That's not a knock on Farcaster team. They built great shit. Anyway. So I reached out to Dan and I was like, I could host FarCon. And he's like, way too early. And then like a few months later, the Boston team was like, we're going to do FarCon. And I was like, but it was great. And it was amazing. I didn't get to go, but I really like, it was so hard to justify. Like, it was so early to be like, hey, babe, this isn't my job, but like, can I spend money to go to Boston? She's like, no. Anyway. So after it happened and as the year was coming around, I was like, someone's going to need to do it again next year. I think Grin or Cameron posted that they weren't going to do it. And so I reached out to them and I was like, I will do it. And they had the confidence in me. And then immediately, I always knew it had to be in Venice Beach because Dan always complains about conferences being dumb and not thinking they're worth the time. And I was like, well, if I put it in your backyard, you can't do anything. You'll have to show up, or we'll just put it outside your office. We'll rent the space and you'll have to come. So it was great. And then Ted obviously brought on and that was like the biggest coup in the world to be like, hey, let's have the person who loves Farcaster the most and is in Venice Beach and is allowed to walk into the Merkle offices and annoy them, help you do this stuff. So it was great. And probably the best part was like, I thought I was good at conferences and like creating a great experience. And then I just learned like Ted and Erica have this another level of taste that I can like now aspire to. And it's been super incredible to get to like, how wonderful it is when you work with people and then all of a sudden they like push you higher and you're like, oh, cool. Like here's another gear I didn't even know I was possible of attaining. And then people show it to you. So that was the most like wonderful thing for me. And then seeing Dylan like jump in and do far hacks. Like most hackathons stink and are really hard to get people to submit. And this was like, people were chomping at the bit. So I'm just so proud of this whole event.
Well, Dylan, where did it intersect for you?
Yeah, where it intersected is that I had newly moved to LA. I was starting to hang out more with Ted in person, who was always super welcoming to giving LA recommendations, especially as I moved closer to the west side. And then I had heard some rumblings about there maybe being a new FarCon. And then Ted was basically like, oh, like it'd be awesome for there to be a hackathon as well. And kind of just from early on, we were having some small conversations about it, but this was like maybe December. So I don't know how much was matriculating by then. But then a couple weeks later, these calls started to happen. And then it's mid-December and we're planning a website to get out in early January, which was like kind of crazy looking back on it. But that's where it started for me, was that I had been thinking for a while about Farcaster hackathons and what it looked like. I had won ETH Denver in 2022 on the public goods track. And I've loved going to hackathons ever since I was a little kid, going to them in middle school in New York. Felt like Farcaster is uniquely positioned for one because the developer community is the core of Farcaster. That's the first group that Dan kind of like went after when he was targeting initial users. And it's made this flywheel where developers build stuff, users get interested in it, and then developers go and iterate on that. And like, that's kind of been a key part of Farcaster's growth. And so as we're thinking about bringing people in real life, I felt like it'd only be right to kind of like continue catalyzing that energy that was already there. And so early on, obviously we didn't know as much about like what it would all look like, but at least from my perspective, I was thinking more about what are the vibes that we want to have, and essentially what are the things that we don't want to do. I think like a lot of times when you're planning a project or a conference or whatever, it's all about like, what do we want to foster? What do we want? But in my eyes, it was also like, I don't want this bad experience that I had at this other hackathon, or I don't want attendees to feel this certain way. So it was kind of just making that checklist. And then as time went on, we were able to fill in the bits and pieces as necessary.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that I didn't see a Justa stand. For those of y'all who know, there was a lot of talk about.
It's so funny you say
Justa
this
and all these things.
I know. So my old work mentor, like before I joined the on-chain world, is actually like a fractional owner, like investor in the Justa and Jelena group. And so that's like, I got Justa pilled because we'd go to like do all of our work dinners there. And then I lived the closest. So he'd be like, here, take home all these leftovers. So like, I'm obsessed. But beforehand, I was like, hey, can we host an event at Justa? And I asked and he was like, yeah, don't worry. We got you covered. And then I wasn't sure where like the event was going to be or like how many people were going to show up. And so I actually had it locked in for brunch to be there for 150 people. But as soon as we upscaled it to like 400, 500, Justa was like, we can't accommodate this anymore.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because what I'm hearing, by the way, with, from Ted and from McBain and Dylan is this idea of like culture or vibes, right? Like you were being very thoughtful about like what the finished product would look like once everything had been programmed and people were coming in. From Dylan, I'm hearing specifically with the hackathon, you didn't want the experience to kind of have, I guess, low vibes, for lack of a better word, or to be just really not a good experience for the people who are participating in it. But overall, for the event, for FarCon, there was this idea of like, well, first of all, who are the tastemakers, if you will, that we should be bringing in that are going to be injecting this like energy, this style, right? So that when people attend, they don't think of it as just a conference. It's more of a cultural event. How can we let people know that Farcaster as a product, as a network, goes beyond just traditional social networks and is really building on something completely different? And it definitely is something that I feel very strongly about, and why since I joined Farcaster, I've been nonstop building there, because I feel strongly about the cultural importance of it. And I think a lot of it comes down to not just the technology, but the people. And I think that translated incredibly well to FarCon as well. Anything y'all want to add there in terms of that and culture with the event?
I can try and take a stab. What I believe, and Graham and Dylan, like, feel free to jump in here, but we were pretty maniacal about thinking through, what do Farcasters talk about? What do Farcasters like? How can we have the event reflect what Farcaster is? And so even if you look at the official events, and like, for better or for worse, we were like pretty adamant about like sponsors. Like, if you are sponsoring or partnering with us, it wasn't a sponsor, it was a partner. Like, there was some sort of activation. It was integrated into the event. It wasn't just like, oh, well, you'll have a logo. And so that was like one intentional decision that we made, was like, okay, if you're going to be doing this, like, how are you going to be including, or enhancing and enriching the experience as you do on Farcaster? So that was like one thing. And then if you look at some of the official events that we did, it was like GM Farcaster live podcast. It was the receipts run. It was an art night and a music night. And like, these were the official events that we decided to do because they best reflect the community, right? That's where people were spending a lot of the time. That's what they like to be doing. And I think going with that like user first or like human first mentality of like, what do people want to be doing? And how can we start kind of like organizing around that is the best way for it to happen. And yes, we were like, these are official events, and we kind of like put the stake in the ground of like, that's what we wanted. But at the end of the day, they were like very community driven, and I would call them like decentralized, because like Coop Records really helped, and the DJ channel really helped put on music night, gallery, highlight, bright moments, like all these people contributed to the art night. And so I think that's where it came from, was like putting a stake in the ground and being like, oh, these are the cultural or like non-technical elements of Farcaster that we all love, that like resonate with us as like humans and people and sapiens instead of just the crypto part. And then allowed everyone to like come in and then make it their own, or kind of like add their own touch to it as well. So I think just proceeding with that approach is the best. Not the best, but like, I think that's one of the ways in which you can continue to drive this. And I think it's just very natural and in the DNA of kind of early Farcaster and Farcaster today as well. So that's my monologue about it. But Graham, Dylan, anything else?
I think along the lines of like the people and vibes, we were, just like very intentional about the type of vibes that we wanted to set. And I think even in terms of scaling, like, there wasn't any point where we wanted FarCon to be some exclusionary event where it's like only for a certain type of Farcaster, but we were just intentional about like the people who want to come and celebrate the Farcaster vibe in person should be able to do so, and we should like make a space that is best for that. I think that's like something that we kept in mind even when it was closer to 150 people at first, but especially as we scaled and like understood this is something we want to continue on. So I guess that's the only thing I'll add is like that's 100% something that we wanted to, and I think we did do a pretty good job of being accommodating and like letting people in and not just being some like walled off event where if you were having issues, we were trying to help, even if it was kind of like a scramble at the last minute to get out extra passes or whatever the case might be then. But yeah.
I think I just want to give like Ted extra credit here for this idea of the partnership. Like so many conferences, the sponsors have a playbook that they're used to following. The organizers have a playbook that they're used to following. This idea of like it being bespoke, I was like, this is going to be so hard. And it just felt so seamless. Like it worked really well. Some people ended up paying the same amount of money, but it really did feel like each product was like really intentionally built into the event. And that I think that sets a standard for how this stuff sort of should work. And if anybody listening is good at like data analysis and loves doing analytics, what I really want to see is a on-chain activity chart for everybody that was at the event. I just think like, what's your on-chain activity before? What was your on-chain activity there? What is it now? I would be willing to bet that it was here, there was a bump, and now the new baseline is a little bit higher. And I think that's sort of, we didn't set out for like a metric like that, but that should be the goal, is like bring people together over common interest, show them what new things have been unlocked that you can do on chain that make your experience better. And then they'll carry that forward into the new world. Somebody, I think it was Antonio, was talking about how this is one of the first times where your online and your in-person identity are seamlessly connected, and the reputation that you gather in person is seamlessly then translated back on virtually again. And that, I think this was like a watershed moment in seeing that. That's why I want to see a data visualization of it so badly, because I think it's a net new thing that has happened. Not to put a hyperbole on it or anything.
No, I mean, I think that's really well said. And I mean, first of all, one of the things that I'm hearing, and this is, again, something that I'm so aligned with, is this movement away from the financialization of crypto, where so many times it's just about like, how much money can we put in? How much money can we take out? It's very singular in focus, whereas, and I think actually Farcaster for me has helped to change the narrative. It's like, no, it's not about the money. I mean, some of it is, but it's not always about the money. You don't start with that. Like, you start with like what Ted said, it's a very human level, right? And this idea of like partners instead of sponsors, I think reinforces that, because you talk about like, okay, well, sure, you're a sponsor, you have money, you want to participate this, you want visibility into this event, but at the end of the day, you also create very human level products and experiences. How can you do that here as well, so that people can understand the value, not just of FarCon, but also of you attending FarCon and supporting this in a way that they would want to continue using or, contributing to after the event. And I think this goes to that data graph that, Graham, you were talking about, where there are these, metrics that prove how someone was active or on chain prior to FarCon and how they elevated that after FarCon. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And I mean, from my personal experience, very different from the way that we've seen conferences before.
I love that. And like, I would put out a Dune bounty for that, or there's like anecdotal evidence I have that I don't want to kind of over index on. But for instance, I've seen people who weren't using Dracula before start using Dracula and now like continuing to post after using it at FarCon. There's also people who I know, like I have a couple of like really close friends from Farcaster who I know from LA. And so I was like running around the whole weekend. But I would see a group of people kind of like sitting on this one bench every time I was walking through the courtyard. And they just like always made me smile. And then I like throughout the weekend was realizing like, oh, there's like different new people who are sitting in the bench and like having conversations that didn't know each other before. And like I guess I have like the knowledge to know like, oh, they weren't friends before, like, oh, they didn't even like know each other before. And now in the aftermath, I'll be scrolling my Warpcast and see like, oh, they're tagging each other in things, and oh, they're like doing Farhouse together. And I'm like, wow. Like for me, something else that's really neat, it would be like looking at the on-chain data of like who became new follows during FarCon, and like, are they continuing to interact with each other's content? Because to me, that is like the most meaningful thing about a social network is like the social connections of it. And so that I like seeing that makes me the happiest. Like that's all we wanted to do was like hang out with Farcaster friends. And we all joke in like our little core group. We're like, we're homies for life. Like, sorry, like we're ride or dies. Like the like 7 of us in this like core group, literally like, I'm like, if you ask me for anything at any point, I will drop what I'm doing to do it. And that is like what makes me the happiest. Just to get a little sentimental there, could like tear up about it. But yeah, Harry's included in that group, by the way, Graham.
So one of the things that I like to talk about, because we're talking about consumer crypto, so we're talking about consumer experiences, right? For me, Crypto Sapiens has always been a great way to test like if things are working for people who are not in the crypto space. And I say that because we started very much as a Web2 podcast. Like our distribution primarily is through like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So the discovery of the platform and the content comes through there first. So there's a lot of people that I've met IRL who really don't use crypto the way that we use crypto or know crypto the way we know crypto. And I ask them questions. I take that opportunity to ask them questions like, did you understand what we were talking about? Did you walk away with more questions than answers? And one of the things that I've been testing is this idea of like Farcaster and FarCon as an onboarding mechanism to crypto, where it's like, hey, you're interested in what we talk about on our podcast, check out Farcaster. It's where I'm at. Mostly. So if you want to connect with me and you want to, learn what we do and what we and basically practice what we preach, go and check it out there. Was that a good onboarding mechanism? Did you have questions? Check out FarCon. Like, what was that as an experience? If you didn't attend, did you understand what they were talking about in the channels? From the conversations that were had there, from the conversations that happened after the event. And it's really interesting because I feel like both Farcaster and FarCon have been really good examples of how you can onboard people to crypto without starting with crypto.
Yeah. So I had this experience last night. Sort of just Zora has done such an incredible job of making it easy to become a creator and start earning on chain. So last night I was hanging out with a neighbor. He started taking photographs, and I was like, "You should put these on Zora and promote them on Farcaster." And he was like, "So we went through it, and the basic pitch was, Zora is the easiest. When I first did photography, I had to take the photographs, develop them. Probably cost me $300 to have an art show, and luckily somebody bought it, and I made money. But if that hadn't happened, I'd be out $200. Now you have these photos, you could just put them up on Zora. It costs you literally nothing." And then you could be making money from it. And what's the distribution? It's Farcaster. And then I got to say, like, and I will help you with distribution on Farcaster because I'm excited about it. But that's a really compelling pitch. He was like, oh, that seems doable. He went from like taking pictures, maybe I can make money on it, to like, here's a path that today maybe somebody would buy one of your photographs. And that's a really compelling argument. People only download new apps if it's going to get them a mate, make them rich, or make them famous, right? Those are the only 3 things. And Farcaster and Zora and all these things could do all 3 of those things. Nobody's done a Farcaster dating thing yet, but I'm sure it's not far away.
One of the things that I'm thinking about right now as you were describing that is in terms of like how people experience, I guess, Farcaster in general, but also like the discovery and all that. What do you think, and maybe this is more of a question for Dylan, because you were at FarHack, you were helping people build new tools, new experiences. What do you think are some of the more novel and maybe that's the wrong word, but like, what do you think is like really where people should be pushing forward in terms of that like narrative of like Farcaster as an onboarding tool for consumer crypto? Did you see anything there? I mean, obviously there were winners for the event, but anything there that you think were like, oh, this is really taking that to the next level? Because, you know, we're talking about Zora as a good mechanism for creators, but did you see anything there that you think are accelerating that even further so that it becomes, I guess, a much more seamless and simple experience?
Yeah. So to be honest, I think the projects I saw maybe were not as onboarding focused, but they're still really cool utilities like Memecaster, use a cast action to make a meme right in the cast. Cast Overflow, it's like a Farcaster client, looks like Stack Overflow, you know, Pidgeymon, Bookmark Plus, like a bunch of really cool utilities. But the one thing that did stick with me from just the overall weekend in terms of onboarding is I think a lot of people are going to onboard through a channel, and that might even be like their only way that they use Farcaster. I think one of the things that Dan was saying was, because when they first started with channels, part of the focus for channels was how do we make this channel a place that is just the best for a topic, regardless of the fact that we're in like this crypto corner. But when they gave their keynote at FarCon and I kind of like asked a question about that, they made it seem like, well, if we just continue to develop the tools for the native communities that are already here, like tabletop and powerlifting and DGen, which is like an awesome example because they like have their own community that kind of expands outside of the normal Farcaster norm to an extent. But when you do that, then they'll have the tools and kind of like make something broad enough that they'll bring in outside people and they'll join that conversation and they'll build those tools. So I would encourage folks to go deeper down that rabbit hole. And I think the great thing about Farcaster being developer focused is it's only going to give people more tools to build that kind of stuff. And then people are going to be much more competitive at the feature level instead of just thinking about, oh, what's this moat I have around the Farcaster stack? Maybe like my signers are better than someone else's signers. And I'm kind of just going to like sit around that instead of innovating on another feature. That's maybe another side tangent, but yeah, I think like the channels are really key for onboarding. And if you can do it in a way where someone's sponsoring the onboarding fee, like not to plug, but Nanar, we do free new user registration. So if you want to check out our docs.
No, 100%. And please do shill. This is not an anti-shill session. I'm more than happy for you to be celebrating all of the different things that you do here so that people can learn about it. I agree with channels being the way that people find their tribe and continue to grow, both their network, but also their own activity in crypto. I mean, I think we saw at FarCon alone, a couple of clients being announced around Farcaster, right? And it's this idea of like Farcaster as a protocol that provides like that rising tide for everybody, right? And I think, Graham, you might have mentioned it, where it's like that keeps growing, what the new baseline is. As Farcaster continues to grow, that new baseline is the same for everyone who's coming in. And it's really a matter of like how you build on that and maybe what other tools you add to it to kind of create a unique experience around it. So I do love channels. And in fact, when people have this conversation about like the blue check mark on Farcaster, it's like, oh, how can I get a power badge? And I'm like, well, first of all, understand that it's not for everyone. The power badge for me is like power user. So if you're not a power user, don't expect it. Secondly, find your tribe and have a conversation, like meaningful conversations in those channels. Grow, you know, your reputation, if you will, as a person of interest, a thought leader in that subject matter. You know, don't go spreading yourself too thin and then going like, well, nobody's interacting with my stuff. It's like, no, like the channels is a very powerful tool. Grow within it or create your own channel for that matter if you think that you have a unique view on something that people aren't talking about.
It's just like chasing money for money's sake, right? Chasing a power badge for power badge's sake isn't going to get you anything. But do it in service of being interested in something. But I just want to, what Dylan said about channels being the onboarding ramp, 100%. I think a channel, and my side prediction is a channel that most Farcaster people hate, but a channel is going to like 10x Farcaster's current growth, like just one, and like through a single thing. And then the powerful thing about channels is that you'll join the single purpose community, you create an account, you'll get reputation and respect, and then you'll find out that reputation and respect is transferable to all these other communities, and you'll go, oh, holy shit. And that's what I think is the magic sort of unlock. And yeah, I mean, I just said this in the parenting channel yesterday. So I've been running the parenting channel. There's no reason that the parenting channel shouldn't be the best place on earth if you're a parent, right? You find out that you and your partner are pregnant, you go to the parenting channel. I would love it if we, through Fabric, crowdsourced like a Finnish baby box. So in Finland, every time someone has a new baby, they get a box with everything you need for the first 3 months of that baby's life is in that box. Like, how cool would that be if you got that? And then you get assigned a few people in the parenting channel that have just had a kid, have been around a little bit longer, whatever, and they're like in a DM group for you. That's your core support group. And then there's like a workforce reentry for people that take time off to be with their kids and want to go start a new job. And it's like you could easily see parenting being the number one place for parents to get it. And they because when you have a child, that's the number one time when you make big life changes and change your habits as a person. So that's like a really great pivot point to get people on chain. And I think to Dylan's point about we need to think about getting more people on board, that's how we need to think. What are those pivot points that people do to change habits in their life? And how can we insert better on-chain experiences to help them, come where we want to go?
You explaining the parenting channel paired with the new decentralized channels, kind of like roadmap, outline, paradigm, etc., literally gave me like chills. Like, I have chills because I'm like, oh, this is like actually what you are describing is totally doable within the Farcaster infrastructure as well. So anyways, it just makes me excited. And I was just circling back to something Dylan said about the Far hack is that, yeah, there weren't that many, I think, like onboarding clients right now or like onboarding projects that were submitted. And I am totally okay with that in a way. Is like right now, I think the only onboarding I would say is that we should be onboarding and illustrating and inspiring other, let's say, like crypto native projects or people to come join this like flourishing civilization we have. And perhaps that I think something, and Dylan, maybe you can describe this. I think one of our things was like, have you implemented sign-in with Farcaster elsewhere? And so something else was interesting, and I don't know how many things were submitted. I mean, it was also like a 36-hour, 48-hour hackathon, and I think it's just like a whirlwind too. But somebody had built a Mastodon to Farcaster bridge, which was really interesting. And so like stuff like that, where you're like experimenting with like crypto native projects, what I really wanted somebody to do was build like a Blackbird, like, the new New York City, like restaurant check-in loyalty thing. I really wanted someone to build like sign in with Farcaster for that. Obviously it makes it like a lot harder when you're not that project itself. But like that to me would be like really exciting for some of the reasons that Graham, like to achieve the future vision that Graham just outlined as well. Dylan, how many sign in with? I don't even know. I'm like, there are so many projects. There are so many things going on. We should just do a full deep dive on that one time too.
I'll have to show you later all the data I have. So we have 18 projects that were in the sign in with Farcaster and clients track, and then 22 that were in the frames and cast actions track.
That's awesome parity.
Yeah. It was really
like almost 50-50.
Yeah. No, it was great. Like unique projects. I think it was also fine that it wasn't onboarding, because the things that people were building seemed to like fit real necessities with people in the crowd, and like the crowd's reaction, I think, kind of like made it what it was, which was awesome. And I also really like that people there, like when we talk about onboarding, I think it's not just onboarding, but it's helping within the existing community. Like, for example, there were people there who didn't really know how to code or hadn't coded much. Some of them were even like our partners who maybe just weren't as technical by nature, but were inspired by the hackers and wanted to build. And not only did I see people helping them there, and I tried to do as much as I could, but afterwards I'm seeing casts from folks like that being like, I'm continuing working on a project, like another project, which has been like, that was the whole goal for me, is like, even if one person can like continue hacking or building on something afterwards, that's the type of energy that we want to continue with.
We've got the CastSense guy is still working on it. So CastSense is like a detailed user stats, and it's really cool. It's like who follows. When should you cast for getting the most reach? All of this stuff. It's like really great analytics. I'm trying to talk to them about integrating it with Crew, because a lot of the Crew customers are brands and they want to know about their brand analytics. So we're talking about having that as be a cool collaboration. But I love it. I love seeing the energy of this. I'm super excited for more FAR hacks and just to see it grow.
Dylan's cooking.
So what I want to just say is, as a hacker myself, having participated in hackathons before, 100%, those are a starting point. First of all, the hardest thing is to meet people who share, I guess, the same excitement for your idea, that want to co-build with you. Because I think also one of the toxic traits of Web3 is that everybody wants to build on their own. And like now you have like 5 or 7 different things that do the exact same thing. So instead of like co-building, they just like say, no, I'm going to do it my way instead of collaborating. But hackathons, in my opinion, are a way to like bring that together instead of it like kind of separated. And so 100% I'm excited to see kind of what all of these different projects that started at FarHack continue to do, and if they bring it back right to the next FarHack and continue to grow there. Because I know I've personally like jumped between 2 or 3 hackathons and continue to build. In fact, the previous hackathon was Frameworks. It was ETH Global. Oh yeah, you were a judge there. That's right. Yeah. I continued some of the work that I started at a hackathon in Permissionless the year before. So it keeps to evolve. Oh yeah, absolutely. So sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that makes me so happy. I loved Frameworks. It was huge. I think everyone was surprised with the turnout, and I was really impressed with a lot of the projects there. I will say about FarCon or FarCon's FarHack, was that there's something really special about, and we had to intentionally make a decision to say like, you can only participate in this if you're going to be in LA. It's okay if you're not coming to FarCon, but like you have to be in LA. And I think it was like so special to be in that room when it started. And it was truly standing room only. Like the group chat was like, hey, can someone turn on the AC? Because it was like getting so stuffy. The energy was so electric. I think the entire Merkle team that was still in town was there. Everyone has their computers out hacking. And to then look around the room and be like, oh, I've seen you build or ship on Warpcast or FarCast in public already. And then you actually get to understand and know who these other builders are and get to comment on their projects and hear feedback in real time and then see each other there the whole day. I mean, Dylan was there like truly until 10 p.m. at night, both days. And then the next day also do that. And so by the time it was the presentations, it was wild. Like everyone there was like this collegial, like camaraderie, like very, very collaborative energy in that room where everyone was excited about everyone's projects. You could see them when they were lining up to present, like the finalists, they were all like, cheering each other on. And like, it was such good energy. And they'd be like, oh no, that's Limone from this project, or like that's so-and-so, or like, oh, we actually hadn't met each other beforehand. And we like formed a team together and like spent all night hacking. It just like that to me is, again, like that's another distinguishing point. I haven't hacked at ETH Denver. I've popped by both times to just like hang out with friends and like chit chat about what they're building. But Dylan, like, is that how it works at ETH Denver? Is just the scale like way too big at those things?
No, it's too big. I mean, I think the cool thing about Denver this year was FarCaster was like the talk of the town. So when you got to the main stage, there was a table that was like all FarCaster people. But I could go on a whole rant about it, but it's like so different. The vibes, how you hear back about if you're a finalist. And it's also not a scheduled thing where one person has the hot mic and is like, okay, here's the current status of the hackathon. You're going to close at X time and it's X, Y, and Z. It's the nature of their venue. They have like 3 different venues. So they like someone can't take the hot mic over like every single thing that's going on there, but it just like causes chaos because then you miss out on deadlines. Like I was given misinformation and completely missed being able to judge. And then even the finalist thing is like a stage kind of off to the side with 15 people. It's not music playing and vibes and a big speaker and a breakfast bagel truck and, however else you put it.
So I'll say that I've been to ETH Denver now 3 years in a row. And it's also been changing. I actually would say that the hackathon has been improving. Take whatever you want from that. But after attending FarCon, after attending FarHack, I made a comment that I stick by today, and that is, I think FarCon and FarHack were a paradigm shift away from what we expect from both conferences and hackathons. I think a lot of that, firstly, was driven by the core values of Farcaster that then have spread out to like Farcaster friendly, either products or experiences. And I'm tired personally. I'm speaking for myself here. I'm tired of traveling the world, going to these massive events, and really neither taking anything of value from the content that is shared, because the programming is just so large, but also not meeting the people that I care about and connecting with them and establishing meaningful relationships that are long lasting. And I think that FarCon and FarHack were the complete opposite of that. I went there, and the expectation, which, was exactly what happened, I met the people I cared about everywhere. Like a lot of the conversations that I had, I'd say 99% of them were with people that I shared values with, that I wanted to collaborate with and build something of value for the future. And I can't say that for any of the events that I've been to, and most likely the events that I'm gonna go to the rest of this year.
I think that's purely a function of, not purely a function, but I think it's largely a function of Farcaster is an app that's based around your affinity. You use it not because it is a crypto app or because it is interesting to build on or whatever. You use it because it's where the people you care about are and hang out. And so naturally an event should be like that. Most crypto events are people who also want to get rich speculating on the same technology you're speculating on. And you may or may not have anything else in common with those people other than the desire to get rich. And so that...
I will say we are all very humble here. I think we all do a better job of bragging for each other than we would ever do for ourselves, for sure. But Graham, I agree with you. It's a function of Farcaster, but I also want to give ourselves credit because we were like cutthroat about how we designed this and how we wanted it to be. And I think coming out of it, there's so much excitement and there was excitement and positivity throughout some of the process. There was that same level of excitement and hype around it, but there were also a ton of naysayers, and there were people kind of behind the scenes who were kind of definitely bearish on the approach or didn't appreciate the approach we were taking. And it was hard. Graham was even when we go back and we're oh yeah, it was seamless for these partners to plug in. It was seamless, for everyone who was there, but it was a lot more work on Graham and Dylan and my end to kind of approach it as okay, this isn't going to feel cringe. This isn't going to feel too corporate. This isn't going to feel it's just 100 thousands of people here who aped in because they're hype about some speculative thing. And I want to just give us kudos and congratulate us for just appreciate the fact that we stayed true to those principles in a rapidly changing environment as well. So even when the frame hype happened, which was maybe a few weeks after we announced the passes and the application, we had already exceeded capacity with the initial application incoming, but after frames, it skyrocketed to more than 1,000, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a hard decision for us to be actually, no, we want it to stay in Venice. We want it to feel this certain way. People and et cetera. And then you go back and you look at some of the people who were really loud or upset about the approach that we were taking in that way. And they either churned post-frame frenzy, or they ended up getting a pass later on and then maybe not showing up or coming. And so anyways, I just want to give us kudos because it's easy to make popular decisions But it's a lot harder to make unpopular decisions in the moment that end up being the right or like the most efficient or productive decisions down the road. And so like it was really hard for a lot of us for a lot of the time. And we're really happy with the outcome. But yeah, I don't like Dylan and Graham. That's like my perspective is like it's great for everyone else, but like a lot of work went into it in the meantime ahead of then. So that's all I'll say on that front. But yeah, giving us a little pat on the back.
Yeah, well deserved for sure. And I agree with you in terms of the hard to make those, or what you said it so eloquently, and I'm struggling to repeat what you said. It's basically saying that it's harder to make those hard decisions for sure. Dylan, you were unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly follow up to kind of praise Ted and Graham here. That I think a lot of FarCon was the vibe that everyone came in and brought the energy, and we care about Farcaster because of the people on Farcaster we care about. But it was also massively because a team of dedicated people who don't work for FarCon as a company, who weren't salaried by FarCon, put in a lot of time and effort to kind of like build something that was crafted with care. And we obviously went to the community for feedback, etc. But I think, like as Ted said, we had to stick behind a lot of those decisions and just put in a lot of time. And if we didn't do it, was some DAO going to take over and organize FarCon for us? Like, what was some group of people needed to get it to the finish line? And I don't mean that to like hype ourselves up too much, but I mean that more to the credit of Ted, Graham, and the incredible people that I got to work with, because if it wasn't like being able to work with this dream team, I don't know if we would have been able to make it possible, let alone like the way that we were able to.
Yeah, let's not get started with DAOs. There's a whole bunch of things we can unpack there. Look, I believe in DAOs. I'm bullish, but I think we need to revisit the topic a bit. Previous cycle, they did not work very well. So we'll see. So what I want to touch on now in the last 10 minutes that we have here is the cast that McBain shared, and then Ted, you shared after that. And I'm sure everybody who was originally attached to FarCon, that is, we officially release ourselves of all ownership of FarCon 2025 or beyond. It is yours now. We can't wait to see what you do with it. Tell me a little bit about that, because by the way, that's very DAO, right? So even though you probably don't call yourself a DAO, and this idea of like decentralized organizations where leadership can emerge, right? Don't look at me like that, Graham. Where leadership can emerge and decisions can be, distributed to different groups. Tell me a little bit about this idea of like relinquishing this, and what would you hope to see from FarCon in the future? Anybody can take it.
Can I just give a little anecdote that my mom shared? Like as I was, because she obviously my mom came and helped, and she was like, "Oh, like what about next year?" Blah blah blah. And she was like, "Oh," and like this is to move away from like, "Oh, this feels very DAO-ish." At my elementary school, every year for a fundraiser, the PTA, Parent Teacher Association, hosts what we call the Spooktacular. It's like a one-day festival that is around like Halloween. And so they like theme all these different rooms. There's games, there's like a spook house, like et cetera, et cetera. Every year, there's like a group of parents who get to lead it, and they choose the theme, they design how it's run, everything soup to nuts. They're in charge of it. And then the next year, another group does the same exact thing. They pass on their notes. The notes, like they can either say, these are great notes, we're going to do it similarly, or they'll take it in a different direction. But at the end of the day, like it's just a different group that does it every year. That's the expectation. And it works really well every year. And so if like the PTA can manage to do this, that's kind of like, she was like, is that how it's like? And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's how it's like. And we don't necessarily need to like overcomplicate it too much. So that's just like one anecdote as like a comparison that my like non-on-chain mom who helped with the event and saw it was like, oh, okay, like this seems very similar. So that's just like one thing that I think can help think about it. But yeah, that's my like quick 2 cents. Graham, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty interesting analogy. So I don't have anything like major to follow up with there. I just say that like we all came to an agreement on that, and like that's why it's posted, that's why we reshared it, etc. I think we all want whatever's positive in the future. None of us really know what that looks like, but we're around to support people with the right intentions and people who are getting the support of the community. I think that was something that helped us a lot, was like, even if there were things we had to do on our own, we tried to do it in a way that seemed positive and that seemed aligned with the community and didn't just seem like we were like shunned off, not listening to what anyone else was saying. So I think if people have the right intentions, then the community is going to continue to steward forward what they think it should, and we can all decide how we want to be involved in that. That's pretty vague, but that's what I'll add.
Yeah. Personally, I think it's too early to like, FarCon this year was categorically different than FarCon last year. So there's no reason to believe that whatever FarCon looks like next will or will not be categorically different than this year. And so I think when people love an experience, they want that to be like replicated. And I think people are like thinking about FarCon like that way right now. But again, like, when Grim and Cameron did it the first time, they were like, this is a decentralized thing. And like, I think that there's plenty of writing that you can look to on that. And so we were like, okay, we're going to do it in our way. And we are here to support and be excited and kind of pass on whatever we can for whoever does it next year. But I think like we said that, but I also, because it was like decentralized, the flip of it is like, okay, what would have happened if like the 7 of us were like, hey, we had such a great time that we're going to do this again next year? Like, what would the reaction be? And I don't think anyone's asking that question. They're just asking like, oh, why are you like letting go of it? And it's like, okay, well, like what would have happened if we were like, hey, we had the best time. People seem to enjoy this, so we're going to do it again. Some people might have been happy with that, but I think like in the ethos of like it being rooted in decentralization, I don't think that would have gone over well personally. Graham, I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think, so obviously I sent that cast, there was all kinds of like, different conversations going on around that. So just to like say that plainly, we were all fully in alignment on like who's organizing 2024, but we didn't do a good job of talking about what's going to happen after. We were so focused on getting the event done that we didn't think about it. And so then the event was over. We're all sort of like no cortisol left. We're getting all this inbound of like, what's going to happen next year? We're just like, we just, so, what happens next? We basically, there's, we don't know. I think it's too early. I think there's going to be sort of, we're going to do our best to share learnings and make it available for people and then be available to answer questions for people. I think Ted's point is right on that. Who knows what's going to happen next year? When Ted and I first were planning this, we're like, can we get 150 people to come to LA, and will they pay $100 for just a Farcaster meetup? And then all of a sudden, this thing exploded. So
also,
who knows? Next year.
Yeah. The one other thing I would say is like my sister who like runs events, she was like, I can't believe that you gave people everything you gave them for $200. She was like, they got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 nights of an open bar. They got breakfast bagels on, they got like breakfast food on like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and like they were like, they got lunch pretty much. Like the fact is like, again, like we just designed it. And like in retrospect, like if we could have, I'm sure we would have raised the prices to cover costs. But like, again, like it just, things change so quickly. And like Farcaster's road, like I posted something the other day where I was like, is this on the roadmap? And Tony and Horsefax responded and they were like, we don't really use the word roadmap with Farcaster or anything because like everything is just like 1 to 2 weeks at this point. Like we're not thinking more than that. And I feel like that was also like FarCon, if like we could think a month in advance, amazing. And so like that's another reason why I think we're all like, okay, we will help, but like we don't want to like manufacture anything. We don't want to be like telling you what to do or like being deciders. Like we don't know anything. And like, I'm almost like, did we start planning this like too early? Even though like we were like, oh no, is 6 months enough? So that's all I'll say as like a closing thought. It's just like, everything evolves. And also like, there's going to be my prediction is like, once channels are permissionless fully, like they'll either be like, oh, people like don't really see the value in them, or there'll be another huge like spark of activity. And so like, maybe at that point, it makes more sense to plan after that's happened. So I could go on forever about this, but yeah.
No, I love it. I love that vision forward while also looking back. Dylan, Graham, any last words before we close? Anything we might have missed that you want to make sure we touch on?
Just say I'm super appreciative for everyone. FarCon was an amazing week, and don't really know what it looks like yet, but there's definitely going to be a future for FarHack as a brand. So stay tuned as I figure that out. In the meantime, if you want to go to farhack.xyz, there's a recap page up there, kind of just like shows the top winners and everything. But yeah, it's been great to chat with everyone here.
Amazing. Thank you.
I would just say that there's a lot of like praise sharing, but this is like I think everybody knows that like Ted is a machine, and this event would not have been as incredible without her. I mean, we all helped. Yes, we all helped, but Ted is really the driving force behind this, and I think that she deserves a ton of respect. So, thanks, Ted.
Yeah, if people aren't, let me know. I'll go talk to them. Obviously, I think it was evident where the energy was coming from. It was evident that you all had a plan, even if it was constantly having to adapt to the circumstances. And yeah, as an attendee, I can tell you that I walked away grateful for your work. I walked away more energized than ever. And I think all of that just comes from all of you and the work you put into it. I went to FarHack, I believe the first day and the last day, or maybe the second to last day. And it was just really incredible to see that the energy never tapered off. The energy was always high. People were excited to be there, to be building. The same for FarCon. The diversity of programming, right, and activities. Heck, I even got a tattoo out of it. It was always high. So, I mean, from me to you, and I'm sure from our listeners to you, thank you for coming together and organizing that. And thank you for sharing your insights. I'm excited to see what you all continue to build, whether through FarHack, Crew, or something else. I'm excited to see it all.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being one of the people who just like brought 110% and positive energy. Like, I fundamentally believe what you put in is what you get out. And Humpty, you were, every time I saw you, you were smiling, you were excited, you were talking to people. Like, you were just, yeah, like you made the event what it was just as much as we did. And so thank you for that.
Appreciate you. Well, with that, we'll come to a close. Bye, everybody.